Everybody, this is Perch. It's easy to be negative about comics, in part because I think it's coded into our DNA as comic fans. And this isn't just kind of me trying to excuse something. It's really, look at how comic fans and comic customers have been portrayed for decades. I mean, you can go all the way back to when The Simpsons first came on. We're talking 30 plus years ago. 30, well, how long has it been on? Anyway, it's been on a long time. And comic book guy was this cynical, negative, certainly opportunist retailer. But I mean, his earliest appearances were very like, oh, here's the first. I'm not doing the voice right, but here's the first time this character appeared, and then they're callously remarketing it for more dollars. And it is a terrible impression. Anyway, this is how comic fans have been portrayed for years, and it was, if not charming, certainly wasn't charming. It wasn't this super kind of hostile thing. And I was having this conversation with, of all people, Chris Claremont at the show a while back, of just how comic fans have always been, because I was asking him, about coming back in, and I don't remember how the topic got around to it, but just like, oh, there's some very angry comic fans on YouTube, gets said. And then, but he's quick to point out, he goes, yeah, but comic fans have always been a little bit, what's the word he used? Vinegary? I don't know, it's something along those lines, basically, to state that comic fans have always been a little snarky. But it wasn't a problem, barely an inconvenience, because it was kind of part of the package. We still knew that even though people were complaining and criticizing, they were still huge fans. And when he said we, he was talking about creators, writers, editors, people within comics. If you go back and you listen to the videos of Kupperberg and Grindelwald. Yeah, there we go. We'll just merge into Harry Potter here real quick. There's a lot of statements that have been made over the years, and certainly on this channel, where that was kind of the relationship with the fans. It was almost a sarcastic relationship. And I remember, running the shop in the early 90s, kind of when I first came in, that was part of the charm, is that you get these people who would come in and they would be sarcastic and they would be, nothing was ever good enough. And then they'd walk out with $100 worth of comics. That was all part of the game. It's part of the culture, if you will. But it seems like in the last, 6 to 8 years, maybe not quite that long, that two things changed. First, the people working in comics suddenly stopped appreciating the sarcasm, or suddenly the sarcasm, it's like, and now you're hurting my feelings. It was fine. Now it's a problem. And it seemed to come rather abruptly. And the other thing that happened, I will say, is that some of the fans started to get more, some of the customers it wasn't just sarcasm anymore, it was personal. And a lot of people have said, the last election, or I guess not the last election, but 2 elections ago, when Trump was elected, it did seem to break a lot of people, kind of on all fronts, in the terms of it, if something didn't go your way, it wasn't just something to be upset about. It was something to hold on and like plan for revenge. It was not just like, this is a bad thing, I'm really disappointed by it. It was over the top craziness. I had friends, I live up in the Pacific Northwest. I had friends when Trump got elected who were like, we are trying to flee the country because we feel like in any day now, Trump shock troopers are going to come to our door and drag us out and put us in a secret prison. I mean, they really believe that. And having lived through, Bush and Reagan and different Republican presidents, this wasn't the reaction before. And so I don't know if it's related, but I can't help connect the two a little bit. And the same thing, by the way, Biden gets elected, and conversely, one of my neighbors, definitely was a Trump supporter, Trump fan. I've got a Trump fan on one side and a anti-Trump on the other. It makes for very charming barbecues. Anyway, actually, the barbecues are fine because, as it turns out, these adults can come into one neighborhood, one yard, and everybody can have barbecue. And even though they politically completely disagree, everybody's friendly. It's this weird thing. I know it doesn't exist anymore, but it's true. Anyway, when Biden got elected, same kind of thing. It's like, all the guns are going to go away. He's going to take away my car because it's not fuel efficient enough. Like, really been out of shape about it. And then online, it's even more severe. But I relate that to comics because at some point, it did become not just this is a bad comic, but this is a bad comic whose sole purpose of being made was to attack me. It kind of became the mood. But the purpose, I'm not getting too off track. I'm just trying to cite a little bit how things have changed. Is that it I almost feel embarrassed these days by being negative. And I don't like that feeling, and I get over it. A couple of glass of whiskey will take care of that, no problem. Barely an inconvenience. Sorry, that's twice in one video. But it is, if you should be able to be negative or be cynical or be sarcastic if you're a comic customer, if you're a comic fan, hell, if you're a comic creator, because that's kind of ours. That's been our culture forever. In fact, I think we lose out if we don't embrace that. I just never turn off all the alarms, and I get these weird beeps. It's the unprofessional Perch show. That's what we got. It is. There once upon a time there was Twisted Toy Fair, and this was pre-Robot Chicken. And they would take action figure toys and they'd make little cartoon strips out of them. They were usually sold in comic shops. I sold many. And they were funny, but one thing about them is they were super sarcastic. And Robot Chicken itself was usually super sarcastic. And if you were to put out that today, like I remember there would be bits about like Skeletor being a sexist and all the villains were trapped in a car and the heroes are being jerks. And there's these little bits that Robot Chicken would do. But I feel like if that rolled out now, that there would be like outraged people on Twitter saying you can't make fun of that because this writer is a person of color or this comic like people, the sense of humor is gone. And I think intrinsically, and I know I've done some videos about this sort of in the past, I think if we don't have that sarcasm, if we don't have that self-deprecation, if we don't have that kind of willingness to poke fun at the industry and it not be the end of the world, I don't think we have much of an industry left. I think that's core to who we are. And I mean, once upon a time, a bunch of people going online to a site called Rotten Tomatoes and review bombing it. I mean, let's assume for a moment that the Ghostbusters movie, the reboot that Feige did, was it Feige? No, not Feige. What am I saying? Paul Feig? Yeah, the female Ghostbusters film. Let's assume for a moment that everybody did go and review bomb it. That campaign was done where a bunch of like 12 people basically reviewed it 10,000 times and caused the rating to go down. Once upon a time, I think that Hollywood and the actors and the director would find that funny. I mean it. There were instances where people would do little things like that to movies and to the entertainment industry, and it was a joke. Nobody took it that seriously, and it didn't create World War III between the entertainment property and the customers. And to the point where, like, if you're old enough to remember Metallica, that they're still doing music, but anyway, Lars started doing some very kind of overly aggressive statements against customers who were stealing music, who were using Napster, and then also started making some aggressive comments about people at concerts who were doing things he didn't like. And he got just panned for it because it's like, hey, you're heavy metal, you shouldn't, you sound like my dad. You don't sound like Metallica anymore. And this was, he suffered for it. Comic books, even if you go back and you look at some of the statements from people like Neil Gaiman, I mean, the craziest thing is I stumbled on some old articles with Ron Mars. And Ron Mars talking, especially back when all the outrage poured in over fridging that Kyle's girlfriend and everything. And he was pretty sarcastic about it. I mean, in a good, like, the fans, he was very blasé about it. Now you fast forward like 15 years and it's like nobody has any tolerance for criticism and nobody has any tolerance for sarcasm. And why? It is part of comics. It's a fun part of comics. And again, I point to, I had people who come in my shop, stand at the counter and talk with each other for an hour. Like they wouldn't leave. Like in my head, I'm thinking, please leave. But they would talk about everything wrong in comics. And usually it was the same things over and over again. And then at the end, they would pick up the $100 in their pull box and walk out the door, and I'd see them again next week. And that was all part of the culture. So why are we trying to get rid of that culture? Again, I don't think people should go crazy over the top. Not at all. People shouldn't. Some of the criticism just veers from being sarcastic and playful into weirdly personal and paranoid. Definitely there is some of that. But it feels like the skin has gotten so ridiculously thin that you can't say anything at all without it being triggering. And do we really want that kind of passive, homogenized, everybody is just able to use basic, this comic was good, I enjoyed it? Is that what we want? I think that we lose a lot in comics if we get there. So I guess in defense of people being sarcastic, spicy, negative, I think it's more a plus than a minus. And again, the comic creators used to know this. Like, they used to celebrate. They used to be in on the joke. I mean, man, if you go back and look at the assistant editor month stuff that Marvel used to do, or even Stan's soapbox and other things, there was so much self-deprecation in the letters pages, in the stuff they printed, meaning they thought it through and then put it out. It wasn't even just comments off the cuff. Why did we go away from that? That was more fun. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Yep. And this channel sucks. Thanks for listening.